What is going on, everybody? Welcome to yet another episode of The Rose Show. As always, I'm your host, Jay. Who else but me? And today, my guest is Peter Gunn, somebody that I met on, I mentioned this site a couple weeks ago, podmatch.com, which is, again, it's a great resource for all podcasters who are looking for guests. And the great thing about that site is, again, they're not paying me to say this. They're not a sponsor of this show. Let me make that clear. It's just a resource that I really think is good for podcasters. So this is the second time I'm bringing this up. I know people are going to start thinking, oh, they're paying you to say this. I promise you they're not. It's a really good resource for podcasters when you need guests that you've never met before. There's no way you would connect without this site. And you meet individuals outside of your wheelhouse. So that is what Peter was. He contacted me through this site and goes, hey, I think I would be a real good fit for your show. And I listened to, which we'll get into this here in a little bit. He's a musician, and I listened to his record, and I was like, yes, absolutely. The second I heard the record, I was like, yes, please, let's do this. Because I was a big fan of the song, and he's a real interesting guy. One of those guys that he's constantly doing something, constantly involved with something to the point where it's like, I wish I had a third of his energy, because I would be able to release an episode every single day and not every week. Or in this case of this week, we're dropping 2 this week. And this whole time I've been like, oh, how am I going to do 2? And I have a guest like Peter Gunn, and Peter, the second he gets home, he's doing something else. And I'm jealous of his energy, but yeah, real interesting guy. And I think that you will think so as well as this episode goes on. But that's all I got for this week's intro. Just want to say, man, Halloween is coming up real soon, and we're going to have some treats for you this Halloween. And I'm going to leave it at that. I'm excited. I'm excited for the guests that we're going to have next month and the guests that we have ending this month as well. So other than that, I'm going to send it over to my sponsors, and then we'll get into my interview with Peter Gunn. Here we go, y'all. Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Jay, and I'm here for W Energy, my sponsors. Now, what is W Energy, you might ask? W Energy is clean, jitterless energy. Better than the canned stuff that you would get at your convenience stores, your gas stations, all that kind of stuff. It doesn't have all that trash in it. Now, how do I know? Because I myself use W Energy. So what I've got here, a couple of limited edition flavors. For instance, W Energy puts out this stuff called Grandpa's Ginger Water. I know it don't sound that great, but it is amazing. Limited run that they came out that I've got actually multiple tubs of. I believe in W Energy. I use W Energy myself. Also, this was just released, and it's another limited edition flavor that they come out with, and it's called Pom Blom. It's pomegranate blossom. Real nice, clean flavor. And a lot of W Energy, whether it be classics like Calio Cream or the Dub Sludge, whatever it might be, it is clean energy. It's not going to make you feel all crappy at the end of the day after using it. Now, here's what I want you to do, because again, they're obviously a sponsor of mine, but what I want you to do is I want you to go to www.w.gg, order one of the sampler packs, which you get one of these cool tumblers, a part of the sampler pack, and I want you to grab one, but don't use my promo code. That's right. Don't use my promo code, who else, at checkout, because I want you to try it without thinking I'm just trying to sell you a bill of goods. Try it one time, and then when you go back to buy your second order of W Energy, then use my promo code, who else, at checkout for a 10% discount, because all you're going to do is try it. I know you're going to love it. That's how much I believe in this product, and I thank them for sponsoring the show today. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to yet another episode of The Rose Show. As always, I'm your host, Jay. Who else but me? And today, my guest, I am joined by author, poet, and musician. He's a creative mind behind the Amazons and a couple other works I'm interested to talk to him about after doing some research on it. But we'll get into all that here in a little bit. And also a musician. I got hip to his band, which again, we'll talk to here in a little bit. And I was very impressed. And me being a music fan, that's obviously what drew me to have this conversation to begin with. But we'll get into all that and more here in a little bit. It is Peter Gunn. My friend, how are we doing today?
I'm doing great. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's a beautiful, almost, well, I guess by the time this drops, it will be fall, but it's a beautiful fallish day out today. And I'm happy to be here as well and just have a good conversation. So this is one of my favorite kind of conversations that I have. And I like calling them cold interviews. And that's because I'm going into this and, we're obviously complete strangers, which is not abnormal, but I know very little bit about you other than the research that I've done. And like I said in the intro, the research that I have done on you really made me intrigued to learn more about your story. So let's go ahead and start at the very beginning and tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into some of the things you were into.
Well, I think the big thing to hit on is I'm an NDE survivor. When I was 7 years old, I had actually died from heat stroke. And it affected my entire life, at least the course of it. I could have just been a normal person, but no, I'm me now. So it made for a dramatic turn in my life's events. Let's just say that. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So how did that happen? Like, were you just outside too long, or that's
Well,
an interesting.
I was about 7 years old, okay, and this is the early '80s. So let me first say that in the early '80s, it was normal to leave children unattended. The parents would just get
Mm,
up and leave. Okay, so my parents were good parents. Okay, I had been given some chores to do out in the yard, and it was an especially hot day. I believe we were having heat stroke, or a heat wave, and my when you're that age, you don't really understand what heat stroke is. I
sure.
just remember feeling very tired, and then I laid down and went to sleep, but it was directly in the sun. My body continued to cook, go into shock, and then I died. When I woke up, I was in what people refer to as their light bodies. So you can think of it as the reverse of a black and white drawing of yourself. Okay, you're made all out of white light, and you're transparent. You can see through yourself. When I remember then looking up, seeing a tunnel with a light at the end of it, I started traveling up it. And when I made it to the end of it, there was what I believed to be an angel there waiting for me. And he gave me a life review. Now, I will say this, I realized that in my perception of my spirit, there was time that it went through my life. You had transpired, but it almost at the same time seemed to happen instantaneously. And this is common with NDE survivors is time or perception of time there is completely different. Almost like everything happens instantaneously, I guess you could say. Like time does not
Hmm,
exist there anymore. And anyway, I mean, I was 7 years old, so there's not much to review anyway. So after
sure.
that, then he brought me over to what I perceived to be the gates of heaven. Like, okay, that's when I realized, like, okay, I guess I'm dead. Okay, but there was another angel there waiting for me, and he was actually quite cross. When I saw him, I had a moment of deja vu. Like, I know you somewhere. I've seen this angel from somewhere before, but I couldn't place him. He was quite cross with me and he said, "Your job isn't done. You have to go back." Then I woke up back in my body, paramedics hovering over me, trying to figure out what the heck just happened to me. So it wasn't, quite expansive. It was actually quite quick as far as NDEs goes, but it did change my life forever after that. Yeah.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. How did you as a 7-year-old kind of cope with that? Because that's like, and obviously this isn't something that I had wrote in my notes or anything like that, but you got me hooked now. I'm very
Okay.
interested to find out more about this. Um, How did you take that as a 7-year-old? And did people think you were making it up? Or because look, just to be honest, and I think you as an adult would understand this too. If a 7-year-old told me I had this experience with an angel, I'd be kind of like, "Come on, are you serious?" Is that how people kind of reacted towards you? And how did you react to their reaction to what you told them?
Well, if your first instinct is, okay, it was a very vivid dream. I was hallucinating, so
Hmm.
I started to try to live my life normally, but then all of a sudden, all the paranormal experiences that people that have NDEs experience started happening to me. I started seeing ghosts, both dark and light. I started seeing things happen, the future happen before it happened, and I was like, "Hey, what is going on with me?" And then there's also the feelings that you bring back, the sense of being able to feel things that are around you. I would because it became very sensitive, especially to malevolent spirits. Like if they were coming close, I knew it. And it almost like a detector for it, I guess you could say. I actually told my mother about it because I had a vision that an old friend was coming to visit. She hadn't called and said nothing. I'm like, "Hey, Mom, this person's coming to visit." And my mother looked at me like, "No, she's not." About an hour later, she knocked at the front door, and then It freaked my mother out. She tried to figure it out. I told my mother she was going to break her ankle on the ice, and the next day she did. It started freaking her out. She's a very religious person, and the problem with religion is always that line in the sand, that you don't cross. But
Right.
what I was doing and what I was saying crossed it, so she's got scared, and I saw I was seeing scaring her, so I decided to shut up, and I suffered in silence. I just didn't say anything. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Did at any point did your mom start to accept it? Because I totally understand what you're saying. Like religious people, and it's so weird to me because not to call her out or anything, but you know, my mom is kind of the same way too, where like anything supernatural is the devil, but just because that was the way she was raised, right?
Like Bobby Boucher's The Waterboy's mother.
Yeah, not to that extent.
Okay.
but like maybe dial that down about 50% and maybe a little
Okay.
bit. Like
Okay.
cause she didn't like, I've got the poster here of ICP behind me. I couldn't listen to anything like that for a long time because it was satanic music and stuff like
Mhm.
that. And obviously as time went on, she loosened up on it a little bit. But in that same perspective, like anything that like seems from his supernatural somehow is for the devil. At some point, did your mom like open up to what you were experiencing? Because I mean, that's some heavy stuff right there. I can understand how somebody could be, freaked out by it, right? Did she ever kind of accept you at all for what you were able to do?
No, once I saw that it was actually scaring her, I throttled back. I like, okay, I'm just gonna shut up about it and figure
Yeah.
things out on my own. And as time went on, as I got older, usually I'd say about when puberty started to hit, it died down a lot. Okay,
Mm,
but the thing that stuck with me and still sticks to me to this day is I'm very much an empath. So I'll feel malevolent spirits if they're even coming close to me. And like I said, I'm very sensitive to that. Yeah.
yeah. Well, is that kind of the driving force? So when we kind of get into some of the stuff that I do have wrote down here, is that kind of the driving force to why you are in so many different genres of entertainment? Because like I said in the intro, you're into music, you're an author, you're a poet. Is that kind of the driving force that made you start wanting to do all these different kind of outlets?
Well, no, I've always been talented and just about and interested in every aspect of that. And
Mm,
when you look at it analytically, like being a poet is very close to being a musician because there's rhythm and flow in the poetry,
sure.
and
Yeah.
there's rhythm and flow in music. So I would say they're interlinked. Not every poet can be a musician and vice versa, but I think poets owe it to themselves to try it, and musicians owe it to themselves to try poetry more. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Well, how did you start down that path to start getting involved in all the different aspects you were involved in? Were they like simultaneously, or is it one after the other? Take us through and let us know some of the projects that you do that I kind of alluded to.
Well, one thing I did bring back with me too is I've always been, I guess you could say, a conduit. Like I'll have these songs under my head, and I know I'm not writing it, so the spirit wheel
Mm,
probably is writing it, and I'll just have to write it down. And I know it's not me because like there were times like I'll give you an example is I was really tired, I'm trying to go to bed, and all of a sudden I get that nudge, that urge, like, oh no, not now, I'm tired. And I'm not a country guy. I'll listen to country music, but what came through was a country song, so I wrote it down. And it's just one of those things where I'd say 80% of the music that I write is channeled, and then I'll always have to change it a little bit, and also update it. The words sometimes I get very old words, and same thing with the poetry is it's not necessarily me. Once I'm in my good flow state, it just comes through me and it just flows, and I keep writing and writing.
yeah. Were you a fan of music from an early age, and what was some of your early inspirations?
I would say the band that most inspired me was the '80s band Whitesnake and the singer David Coverdale.
Nice,
You know,
nice.
yeah, yeah. If you look at some of their songs, I mean, without the music playing, like, oh, wait a minute, that's a poem. Yeah.
Right. And plus David Coverdale's has such a strong
Oh
Still of
yeah.
the Night. Still of the Night is probably one of my favorite songs by
Hmm.
him. I'm a fan
Yes.
of all music, like you said.
Yeah.
Country, I've started in the last, I'd say probably a decade or so. I've kind of warmed up to it, but yeah, it took me a while. But other than that, like I listen to everything and anything. If it's on my radio and it's got a nice tune, I'm gonna love it. I'm not one of these picky music lovers who, oh, that's not real metal, or that's not real rap. Like, if it's good, it's good. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, when you said White Snake, I mean it was like, oh, David Coverdale, especially Still of the Night, man.
Yeah.
Listen, if you've never heard, you being the viewer, listener, wherever you're watching, listen to this on. If you never heard Still of the Night, press pause right now and
And go
turn
find
that
it.
on.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, that song is excellent. Just the music, the vocals, everything. Hell yeah, that's very cool. That's very cool. Well, how did you end up transitioning into writing stories? Because one of the things that I was looking at, your book, The Amazons, I was looking at kind of doing some research on that. Talk us to how you kind of started on that journey, because that was pretty interesting from what I saw.
Well, when you have kids, I had my daughter in 2010. I wanted to enroll her in my love of poetry, and the epics like the Odyssey, Dante's Inferno, Beowulf, things like that. But then I remember then realizing, I'm looking at all these books, like, why would a young girl want these? Why would what's in it for her? You look at how the feminine is represented in Beowulf, it's a demon. If we look at how some of the
Mm,
feminine is represented in the Odyssey, there's sirens. It's not very favorable. So why would a
right.
young girl want to read this unless it's forcibly assigned to her in school? So I like, well, that's sort of fucked up. So I decided to do something about it and write my own. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's obviously the inspiration then about why you made them giants and strong characters, because you wanted to kind of make a role model for your daughter.
Yeah, that and when you start doing research, as any good author does, I started finding a lot of things that were covered up by the Smithsonian, like the fact that they had
Mm,
discovered giants in the Amazon, numerous giants, and that was also where, if you look at the Ancient Scrolls of Herodotus, where it was hypothesized that they lived was in the Amazon. So there were a lot of things that were correlating, and I also found out it wasn't just isolated to that one area. There were also, so we say, some people wrote about them being also in Asia and in Africa. So the Amazons were more worldwide. I guess the best way you could describe them would be like a Spartan society, except they're feminine, they're females.
yeah. Do you think maybe that's the correlation then, if they discovered that? Because I've always been kind of intrigued, like when you hear the story about David and Goliath, I was thinking, well, that's kind of far fetched, because were there really, people that big? Is there a correlation between that time frame, or is this how did that research go? You got me kind of intrigued to find out more about that.
Well, it depends on how much of your Bible you've read and if you're familiar with it, because the fallen angels, okay, so Satan's followers had children with human females, and those children were like Goliath. They were giants. That was the outcome of it. So they did exist, and it's been covered up, unfortunately. But like I said, by the Smithsonian, as soon as they hear of that, they're sending a whole team down there to cover it all up. Even in America, they've discovered remains of giants. Okay, I'm not.
Really?
Yes, start looking it up. There are giant remains all over, especially the East Coast. Yes, they just cover it
Hmm.
up. They don't want anybody to know about it because then they have to rewrite history or their history that they want you to believe. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Wow, that's really interesting. I'm gonna have to do some more research on that. Okay, so let's keep going, because we can sidebar for the next hour on that. So let's keep going. So some of your other literary artworks that you've done, Karupi's Curse, is that how you
Yes.
pronounce that? Yeah.
The
Tell
Cruppy
us a
Curse.
little bit about that as well.
Well, the Cruppy is an odd character. He was an ancient deity from South America. I ran across him when I was doing research for the Amazons, and um, if anyone has a especially ugly baby down in South America, okay, the women will say, "Oh, you made it with the Karapi. That's not from your husband. You made it with the Karapi." And it was a way of just saying, "Oh, that's not your fault. The Karapi got to you." But I thought it was quite funny.
Right.
But But it made me think, like, there's also smaller children. My daughter's 15 right now, but that are going to need a story as well, a good bedtime story. So that's why I decided to write that. Use ancient deities from South America and a good princess coming of age feminine story to accompany it, and then it would be something. It's something safe. You could just buy it on Audible, press play, and let your kids listen to it, or just read it to them. And it's something safe for children. There is loose lyrical poetry in it, but it's not strict like the Amazon, so it's easily understood and read as well.
Yeah. Do you find, because when it comes to coming up with creative ideas for stuff like that, obviously, you have to start with a base. And this can go across any area of literature, not just what we're talking about right now. How do you find inspiration other than your research to come up with the actual story? Because I think from an outsider perspective, I don't know. I'm a musician myself, so when it comes to writing lyrics, sometimes I just get hit with a writer's block that I just can't shake. Like no matter what I do, I cannot come up with stuff. And I look at that as being super difficult when it comes to writing lyrics. I couldn't imagine what it would be like as an author getting writer's block and trying to find, where does this character go from here, or I don't even know where we're headed. Or how does that process work for you when you're trying to come up with something creative? Do you even have writer's block? Is that an issue for you at all?
Oh yeah, everybody has writer's block, but my lifestyle helps keep it in check. So I would say
Mm.
number one, stay healthy, eat right, go to the gym, and I meditate. I meditate every day to help clear my mind of what they call the monkey mind, so that all the stuff that's going on that you're trying to think about at once. And once you're in that state, if you take care of your body and your mind, it will help alleviate writer's block. So when you sit down, you can focus. It will help a lot. Yeah. Just cut down the caffeine too. Yeah.
As I sit here and sip my tea.
Oh, I'm bad too. I'm bad too. Yeah, I love coffee.
Yeah, yeah. I'm trying to slow down on it because I'm getting up there, man. I'm 39 years old and I'm starting to like get to that point where like I'm gonna have to start making doctor's visits. So it's like, I gotta find a way to start doing that. So you said something that kind of intrigued me there, as far as meditation goes. What do you find, like what's that process like for you? Because again, that's something else that I've been kind of thinking, man, maybe I need to start taking like 20-30 minutes to myself and just trying to, like you said, clear the monkey mind, but it's difficult for me, and I'm sure it's probably difficult for others listening right now. How do you do the whole meditation thing where you clear your mind and kind of hit the reset button?
Well, you have to acknowledge it exists, that whole monkey mind, okay? So you can't put a kibosh on it. It's going to have to exist. What I always do is I picture it as myself standing next to an overpass, okay? And all the things I'm thinking about are on the top of it, okay? So whether it's you got the bills, you got stuff to do with the children, you got stuff to do with the wife, you have stuff at work, and all that crap is up on top. And I will start to envision myself walking underneath it. So it still exists. I'm just walking past it into sheer darkness. Okay, so it's still there, going on, but now I'm in darkness. I'm in my Zen state, and I'm able to focus. So that's the key with that sort of thing, is to not think about anything. It takes practice. It's not going to come to you right away. It takes practice. It's harder for some people, but it is. If you could get to that point, it will help you in writing anything. It will help you in life in general. It really will. You'll keep you calmer.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, there's definitely some truth to that, absolutely. So again, you're into music as well, as I kind of alluded to, and
Mhm.
one of the first things that sold me to have this conversation was the band that I looked up on Spotify, and that's actually what I told you, and you can vouch for this. The first thing I said is, "Man, I listened to the record, I am sold." Uh, Talk us a little bit about that band because I've been jamming since we talked about it a couple of weeks ago. It's on my everyday playlist. So tell us a little bit about your band and how that created, because the way that you record as well is kind of unique in itself. So let
Yes.
us know
Yeah.
about
Well,
that.
okay. When you're an entrepreneur, you're always looking for ways to reinvest back into yourself and relaunch your brand out there. So I had a good friend, Andrea Giordani, who is a very talented voice actress. I had hired her to redo an audiobook for me for the Amazon. So we're going to turn it into a drama. Like, so it's going to sound like you're listening to a movie, basically. All the
Mm.
sound effects are going to be there. And what does a good movie have? It has a soundtrack. So I like, okay, well, I'm going to start at the soundtrack because Andrea's got that handle for the most part, you know. And then I started looking around for bands, and then when I bumped into them, and they were I was on Upwork.com, and they were in Germany. Okay, so I like, well, can we make this work? So we started to see if we could record via Zoom, and we do have to clean up the audio in different programs to make it serviceable, shall we say? Because there's a lot of hisses and buzzes when you record via Zoom, but we're able to make it work. And they were taken by my ability to not only write songs, but my ability was with this guitar as well. So we decided to make a band, I guess you could say, and that's where the Jugs came from.
Yeah. So you're a guitarist then in the band?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all.
How many years
That's
have
all.
you?
About 5-6 years.
5-6 years, really?
Yeah.
And it sounds that good. Wow.
Mhm.
Go ahead and let everybody know how to look up the band and project and all that kind of stuff. Because again, that's a great project.
Well, you could go to well, we're on all platforms right now. So type in the Angellics with 2 L's, Angellics. The album's name is Hazing Hades. It's our first album. And if you want to go to my website, you go to www.petergunn.net and look up any of my projects I'm currently working on there.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the one song here that's on my everyday playlist. The Adjusters. That
Okay.
was the first song that I heard. And
Mhm.
as I you could tell from the wall behind me, I'm into obviously a lot of different music, but these guys right here, Linkin Park, was the first band that really brought me into that kind of new metal style almost. But shortly after, I started getting into more like just for lack of better words, like a heavier alternative rock. And when I heard the Adjusters, I was like, yes, it is on my everyday rotation list. So that's a very good track. Just wanted to tell you that. So let
Yeah.
me ask you this then, because this is something that I struggle with. Because I wouldn't consider myself religious at all, but I am spiritual. I also myself had some things happen to me before in the past, which I won't get into, but some things that weren't of me, I guess I would say. And it didn't make me religious, but it did open my eyes to like, okay, there's something else going on right there. But with the things that I'm into, case in point, right behind me is a poster of Ghost, which is very anti, God and stuff like that. But I'm into it. That's what I'm passionate about. Same thing with Insane Clown Posse. It's very violent music. So as somebody who has a band who has some imagery of which if you look up the album cover for this record, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
The imagery of it is a little devilish. With somebody that had an experience that you had, how do you balance that of this is what I'm into, but everything I've ever been told tells me I shouldn't be into this if I'm spiritual? How do you balance that? I'm curious.
Well, number one, the word hazing. Okay, so we are making fun of Hades or hell. Okay, so that's number one. And then if you
Mm.
zoom in to the symbolism I used, the letter S in the word angelics is a dead snake, and he is being pierced by the spear of destiny. So are you familiar with what that is?
Yes. Oh
Okay.
God, what was that? Constantine? Was that the
Well,
movie
no,
that
the
that
spear
was?
of destiny was a spear that was used to kill Jesus. So it
That
was
was it. But there's
what the
some
guard.
comic
Yeah.
or movie or something that references that. That's how I know it.
Yes.
I can't remember
Constantine
what it
did it
is.
too. Yes. Constantine did it, I
Yeah.
believe. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. That is it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's a giant middle finger to the Satanists in the metal community. Okay. It's a way of me sticking up my middle finger to them and the rest of the band. Yeah. And then, of course, the eight-pointed star, which also symbolizes the throne of God. Okay. Yeah.
Mm. So you kind of take it from a muse standpoint of, yes, this
Well,
is
it's a fu. We're not afraid of you standpoint. Okay.
nice. Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, with all the different projects that you have, I'm interested to find out, other than meditation, what else do you do to kind of balance that? Because you do physical, you work out a lot, from what I
Mhm.
saw as well.
I'm a
You do a
bodybuilder. Yeah.
lot of you do a lot of stuff. You're a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
Oh wow, okay. So I didn't realize that. How do you find the time? Look at that arm. My dude's flexing on us. How do you find the time and balance all of that? Because that just seems like, man, when I was looking through your list, I'm just like, man, I don't even know how you would have time to meditate, let alone. How do you balance that workload that you have?
Well, the time that people use, so we say to just chill, I guess, I
Mm,
don't use that. I use it productively. So then I'm writing another paragraph in LLP. I'm thinking of another song. I'm always doing something. I'm effectively using the time that's given me. Okay. So it's a matter of, if you think about it, if you thought about it, like everyone has a lunch break at work, right?
hmm
So, a lot of times you're like, okay, and you just want to sit back and just not do anything, or you'll scroll on your phone. What if you use that hour lunch break to write a book? How much progress would you make in a year? You know, be real effective with your time management. Also, limit time, um, like with emails. People will sit there for a long time. Okay, I got to go through 200 emails. No, no. Unless you keep getting emails from the same person, or it's at the top of the list, cut the time down to 15 minutes. 15 minutes, get up and walk away. Don't look at them anymore. Okay? Your house isn't going to burn down, and you're not going to get thrown in prison. Okay? Everything will be fine. Be willing to limit the amount of time you do have to live in this world, but limit the amount of time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is the good thing that I started rolling out of some of these newer phones where they'll actually at the end of the week give you your usage that you've
Yeah.
been on your phone. I pay attention to that quite a bit. And every week I'm like, oh, please tell me it was less. Because obviously, doing this podcast and stuff, I do use my phone as a tool to do, stuff like that. And I record on my laptop, so that kind of eliminates it. But as we're sitting here talking, I've got my phone on reading notes. So, I got to kind of take it with a grain of salt because I do use it as a tool. But yeah, the doom scroll is something that I think a lot of people struggle with. Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're
Just
unaware of how much time they're using up, really.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, what other projects do you have coming up as a man that's always busy, always on the move? What else is in the future for you?
Well, we ran into problems, but we're back on track now because I have a team of artists that had to design the cover for Hazing Hades for the album. But I have them back working on my Sigma Squad graphic novel, and that's going to be based on ancient Gnostic gospels and texts about two angels that will come down and hunt members of the deep state. So it'll be quite
Mm,
graphic. Yeah. Yeah, and it's going to be, so we say, enlightening to people that like that sort of thing because I'm going to expose what's going on behind the scenes. So nothing's going to be taboo. Nothing's going to be taboo. Yeah, Satanism, what the Masons are doing behind the scene, child trafficking, you name it. Everything's going to be in there. Yeah.
very cool. Very cool. Well, somebody that also has so many different interests and hobbies, I definitely respect your grind. Um, I also, as a musician, know how hard it is to make a good record, and I definitely think you guys did that. I enjoyed it from front to back. What I did hear of it, and man, just the fact that you do that all via Zoom is just. I don't think people who don't record can understand just how hard that is. So much respect to you, my man. And I always give the last couple of minutes to my guests to plug any kind of social media, anything like that. If there's anything you want to let people know, I know you already gave your website, but give it to us again and let us know where to find you and all your projects.
Yeah, you could go on to your favorite music platform and type in the Angellics, Angellics with two L's. The name of the album is Hazing Hades. And also, you could go to my website, www.petergunn.net, or go to Amazon Kindle, type in Peter Gunn, the Amazons, if you want to download my book.
Awesome. Peter, thank you so much for joining me today, man. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me, Jay. It was fun.